What's up, champs? Welcome to a special episode of the Keeping Karlsson Short Shifts Fantasy Hockey Podcast, a twice-weekly amuse-bouche between Brian and my mega show every Sunday. I say my because I'm here, Elon Dubrovsky. Jeremy, Shams, Lewis have been holding down the fort for a while now, but, you know, such an exciting day of fantasy news. Felt I had to come in. Well, no, obviously Jeremy and Lewis weren't able to make it today, but I'm really excited to jump in today to get, first crack at all of these exciting trades. Well, actually not all of them, because Jeremy and Lewis covered a bunch of them on Tuesday, but since then we have a whole whack more, and so I'm going to be going through them with my guest for today, regular Short Shifts co-host at this point that everyone knows and loves, Shams Benamor. Shams, how you doing today?
I'm doing okay. Talking about going over trades. It feels like we basically have a whole trade deadline worth of trades to talk about today. And we'll see what's happening Friday. But honestly, it's still, I forget what it is. I think it's like double the amount of trades that happened this year versus like a year or two ago. So if you think it's happening a lot, it is happening a lot.
Well, yeah, who's even left at this point to get traded? Like, I know Klingberg's being held out of games. I think most of the big names have gone at this point.
I don't know. There's, we'll talk about him later, but maybe JT Miller? I don't know. It seems like every status changes with him, and you got Besser. You got like a couple of the Reiber. Yeah, there's a lot of the people that were like, you had to wait for the grade A people. So like when the Canes, the Tarasenko's, and the people got taken, the people that didn't get them now want someone for themselves. So kind of the B and C tier people. It's not as exciting, but hey, it's sometimes the random person. Like, I don't think everyone was drooling over Toffoli a few years ago, and he ended up probably winning some fantasy leagues or at least helping you through the playoffs.
Yeah, or Arturi Lehkonen last year for sure. But hey, we've got the good stuff. Maybe like Brian and I will be left with some of the dregs on Sunday. But Champs, we've got a lot to get to. So let's probably just jump in. I think that the biggest trade today is one we've been waiting like a year and a half for, and it finally happened. Jacob Chychrun on the move from Arizona. It seemed like they were going to be holding out for multiple prospects and picks and all of that. In the end, the Sens basically, what did they pay? A first in 23, a conditional second in 2024, a second in 2026, which still is wild to me that they even go that far. So yeah, I think a lot of tweets that I've been seeing today have been fans of other teams being like, wait, that's it? Why didn't we just trade for Chychrun? The Oilers paid more to get Matthias Ekholm, but hey, whatever. The Ottawa Senators, all of a sudden, don't look now, but not only is this an exciting trade for them for the future, because Chychrun's still under contract for 2 more years, but the Sens, after beating the Rangers today 5-3, they're right in the thick of a playoff race. Did Pittsburgh win also today? Because I know they were 5 points behind Pittsburgh.
I think they won in overtime.
Also won. Well, that's frustrating because I've decided I'm back on the bandwagon. I'm a huge Sens fan now. Go Sens go. But as far as fantasy goes, obviously the first thought that came to my mind was, okay, is Chychrun going to jump onto the top power play and bump Thomas Chabot? Didn't happen. Not today. Anyways, Chabot still played on PP1. Chychrun and Jake Sanderson both took spots on the second power play, but played less than half the time that Chabot played. So as of now, and obviously things can change. This is just the first game. Chychrun literally just got to New York in time to play this game. They haven't even had a practice. But if things stay the same, my take would be this is kind of a hit for Chychrun in fantasy, right? But maybe it's too early to say that since we don't know what the deployment will be once they've had some practices.
The way I'm thinking about it, I'm with you, is that even without the power play time, what I feel like is that once he gets a little bit more into the team and whatnot, and not literally just show up hours before and need to take a nap in the hotel before he could even decide if he's able to play, is that this team is scoring. Well, obviously it's easy to score more than Arizona, but they're scoring more than a lot of teams right now. So just being on the ice for the 5v5 time, he's just going to be in a position to just get so many more points in general. So maybe he might not be in a position to get the hits and the blocks or whatnot he was getting before because the team was getting caved in, but he's going to get the better stuff, the goals and the assists, just because he's going to be out there to bring Cat, Giroux, and all the other good players.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Maybe more even strength scoring, even if he doesn't necessarily get the power play. Today, only one shot. He did have 5 blocks. I think now could be, well, it's probably past the trade deadline. I guess we can't be giving advice anymore about trades people can make. I was going to say maybe now's a good time to reach out to the Chychrun manager and be like, oh, well, his value's tanked. I'll take him off your hands for pennies on the dollar, but probably it's too late anyways. But yeah, I do agree with you that I think that he's going to have some big games. And I'm also excited for the Sens. I think that we're like a defenseman away from potentially being able to be like a strong contender to at least make the playoffs. And so I think it's going to be a fun run down the stretch. Also, I think this pretty much ends the possibility of Cam Talbot being traded. Like back when it seemed like Ottawa was going to be sellers potentially, then Talbot's a UFA at the end of the year. But now that they're going to be chasing a playoff spot, and obviously you don't just trade for Chychrun and then send away your number one goalie with Forsberg injured. So I think, I was excited about Mads Sogard when I saw some rumors about Talbot potentially being on the trade block. But now if you added Sogard, might be good for a spot start, but I think that Talbot is going to be your guy, and anyone who has him is probably pretty happy at this point that he gets a little defensive help finally.
Oh yeah, I'm with you in that boat. Like, there might be a situation is that, like, I think most of us are in the same boat that we never really trust Talbot that much, so maybe he might lose starts, but like we'll have to see that happen before doing anything. But he's not perfect, but I'll take him any day at this point.
Yeah, like I'm definitely not. Yeah, we're totally on the same page. I'm just saying, like, Sogard is not like the starter now, like he would have been if Talbot's taken away. But yeah, obviously there might be stretches as we go through that maybe people start wondering if Sogard should get more starts. I guess they'll have to see. Went pretty well today for the Sens over the Rangers. The next big trade, we don't have a game though, unfortunately. Very frustrating, but we have Tyler Bertuzzi being sent to the Bruins for picks, and that is a team that's already super scary in Boston. They already acquired Dmitry Orlov earlier. I guess this was already like last week, and Bruins just destroyed Buffalo 7-1 today. Orlov, all of a sudden, by the way, becoming a scoring machine, a goal and 2 assists in the game today. It's like 7 points in 4 games now, I think. He's definitely enjoying his time with the Boston Bruins. And yeah, Boston already so scary, and now they're bringing in Tyler Bertuzzi, though of course it is, at least for the regular season, to replace Taylor Hall, who's been put on the LTIR, and Nick Foligno's also injured. So maybe if you think of it that way, it's like not much of an upgrade. But imagine come playoffs, if Hall's healthy, Bertuzzi comes in, it's just another piece to this already pretty stacked team.
Yeah, so like my first guess was the third line, basically just kind of where the Hall was. But there is something to keep in mind of, I don't know if we have an update, but the team was leading by a lot, so it may have just been for safety case, but Marchand actually did not play the third period. So there could be some mix-up of whatnot, of maybe having different lines and whatnot, where Bertuzzi might be paired with Bergeron or Pasternak or whatnot. But either way, in the end, I think if a fully healthy team, I think it's just going to be a situation is probably like the check line. It's been working fine. And like the one line with Marchand, Bergeron, and DeBrusk has been going off. So I don't think you really want to tip those off. So it's probably just going to be third line and maybe power play too. I'm not even sure who's on there. But in the end, it's going to be one of those situations where it's oddly a downgrade, probably. Like, even if it's a better team, like, just the lack of opportunity. Like, you're not with a Larkin caliber player in most of the time going to be on the third line in Boston.
Yeah, and it'll be like less ice time. It's not like in Ottawa where we were talking about with Chychrun, where it's like, yeah, like maybe he won't be on the top power play, but I'm sure he's going to play a lot. Like if Bertuzzi's on the third line in Boston, he's not. Though, like in the last game in Detroit, I guess we can't really look at the most recent games because maybe they knew that they were going to be trading him. But there were times where Bertuzzi was playing among like 18 to 20 minutes a game. So yeah, that could definitely go down. He's already been a pretty big disappointment this year, like only 14 points in 29 games. So he might be available in free agency. And I think I'm with you in the long term. He's not too exciting, but like you say, like the Bruins also definitely have the playoffs all clinched at this point, probably first in the conference clinched or very close to it. So maybe, there's no reason to rush Marchand back. Like if he is actually hurt even just a little bit, then maybe he stays out for a little bit. And then, yeah, maybe Bertuzzi gets an audition on the top line with Bergeron and DeBrusk, and that could be really good in the short term. So yeah, if Bertuzzi's available in free agency, that could definitely be something to look at. There's also potentially a top power play spot available. I know he was really good on the power play in Detroit, like in the net front spot.
And one thing to close out, I was thinking the same. You were probably thinking the same. Sadly, with Bertuzzi out, this does not change anything with Verana. He did not even get to play today. So I'm at the point, until Verana plays like 5 games in a row and gets a goal in each game. I'm just pretending he doesn't exist.
Yeah, it was interesting when he got called up. I thought like maybe he'll do something. He used to be good in previous years for fantasy when he would play. Like, I don't know if he was good in real life, and like obviously his coaches sometimes wouldn't give him much ice time, but he seemed to get a lot of shots and points in the ice time. Like his points per 60 were always good. It was just that per 60 was the obstacle, and now he's barely getting any time at all. So yeah, you got to forget about him. Detroit lost today 5-4 to Seattle, and I saw that Dominik Kubalik was getting the spot on the top line with Larkin. And I guess who else? I don't even remember now. Someone else who's good. Oh,
I think it was Raymond.
Lucas Raymond. Oh, Lucas Raymond's back. Well, that's exciting. Though Kubalik didn't do anything in this game, so no points, even though Detroit scored 4 times. Actually, the 4 goals for the Red Wings were scored by Berggren, Adam Ernie, Ben Sherratt, and Jake Wallman. So it wasn't exactly the game where you were getting when you see 4 goals from Detroit, you expect that you're going to get a lot of points from your studs. But Larkin got an assist, Zadina got an assist, and it's pretty much all people who are in my free agency and all my leagues aside from those 2.
Oh no, I've said it before in I think previous shows. Is that I basically look at the Wings forward group basically the same as Seattle. Is that other than Larkin, they're all basically the same kind of guy that has the same ability of doing something. Like one day it could be Perron, one day it could be Kubalik, one day it could be Fabry. So at this point, instead of playing whack-a-mole with Wings forwards that are not even guaranteed to get a point anyway, I'm just basically staying away from them unless there's a special case where streaming makes sense.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And now, by the way, speaking of Detroit, we should also talk about their defense, who, like, even before, it was getting a little bit tricky to figure out, like, who to add on this team, like, aside from maybe a Sider, though he'd been cold lately. And now, all of a sudden, they've traded away Filip Hronek. He goes to Vancouver in a deal where Detroit got a first and a second for Hronek. Oh, I didn't realize he was that good. You're a Wings fan. You tell me. Like, to me, this feels like a steal. And also Vancouver.
Oh, no, yeah. No, it's 100%. I love this because I think someone said, like, I didn't do the match, but effectively, it's the only difference between this deal and the Chychrun deal is I think the Chychrun deal has an extra second round pick. And I've been reading some of the, like, how I read all the tweets. The Vancouver media is having a meltdown of saying, like, why the hell are we doing this kind of trade? Why do we want this kind of player? Why are we giving up the first that we got for Horvat? So you're effectively trading part of the Horvat because it was the first round pick you got for him for this. And, like, Hronek's basically a good defenseman on a bad team. So, like, he was the guy that you tried out. He was a good soldier. He ate the minutes. He did the things. He had some, like, good stats at the start of the year, but I think his, like, Corsi numbers and whatnot are falling off. But, like, on a good team, he's not a good defenseman. But, like, if you just need someone to eat a lot of minutes, which Detroit needed badly for the last few years, he was a perfect kind of guy. But to get this kind of return, hell, even if we were going for it in the playoff run, I would be 100% fine with this trade.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what the Canucks are doing here, I guess, but they're excited to get Hronek, and so I know, like, Vancouver does need defense because they got, like, OEL and they got Tyler Myers, and they really haven't worked out well for them. So we'll see how Hronek does, but I'm not banking on too much. In today's game, for what it's worth, Jake Wallman got second power play, and like I said, he did score a goal today, so maybe someone like him gets a bit of increased value if Hronek's out of the picture. Sider less at risk of losing his top power play for whatever that's worth.
100%. This is a addition from subtraction because in the previous 3 games, it was a weird 3-headed monster of, like, it was effectively Sider having a little bit more time on the power play than Hronek and Wallman. Whereas, like, so it was almost like a, say, like 40-20-20 kind of split. So now with Hronek on, you can actually have just that 20% be feeding in between those two, so both of them get that power play bump, and also just getting just a better situation overall. I'm not sure if you haven't had the chance to see it. I know this is an audio podcast, but look up Wallman's goal that he got today. He has some offensive flashes. He got an extension. I am 100% on the Wallman train. I don't know if it's going to be much for fantasy, but it's going to be an interesting thing to watch going forward for maybe something to take a chance on in your deep dynasty leagues or something, because I think he's going to be something big in Detroit's plans.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. Well, I know he just got that contract extension, so he'll be around. Maybe someone to look at in like the last round of your drafts next year. Apropos of nothing, I'm against Kirill Kaprizov in a playoff matchup in my dynasty league, and this guy's very good. He keeps scoring goals. It's very frustrating. I saw that Minnesota just scored to make it 2-1. He had already scored the first goal, and I just thought to myself, it's going to be Kaprizov, isn't it? And then I looked at it, of course, it's Kaprizov every time. And Ryan Hartman with the assist. So anyone who jumped on him at the right time, that was smart. Hartman back on the top line is very interesting to me. So I know that wasn't even planned for the show, but I saw this Kaprizov goal, so I just had to say.
Well, one thing to add is there's still, 12-ish hours? I'm not sure, 16 hours until the trade deadline is finally done, but it looks like they haven't done anything. Like, maybe like you could have guessed maybe a Domi, or they tried to get a center or something to bump up their value, but all so far I think they got is Marcus Johansson and did a couple of cap deals. So I'm not sure if they're going to be trying to find anyone to replace, or if there's even a center around that can bump Hartman off. So you might be safe, like trying to sneak him in. I'm not sure how his weeks goes now, but if you have a position to sneak a pickup and fit him into your next week's games, I don't think you have to really scare about him getting bumped off. And obviously my bad for jinxing the big trade that's going to get a random center, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I don't think that there's anyone really left. Though you brought up Max Domi, who got traded to Dallas, so I guess we could bring up his deal next. Domi and Dylan Wells, who's a goalie, I believe, to Chicago for a second, and Anton Hudobin, which is clearly just a cap dump there for Hudobin. So basically it's just Domi to Dallas for a pick when you put it all together. And Max Domi now becomes pretty interesting because he's having like such an amazing year, like a career year for this guy. Well, I guess he already had his career year back in Montreal where he had 72 points, but he's doing it again this year. 49 points in 60 games, so 67-point pace with Chicago. I saw a tweet from Mark Lazarus saying he's confident that Domi's going to re-sign with Chicago in the offseason just because it was like such a great fit. And it's been great for Domi, right? Because it was looking like his career was kind of going down. Like, you know, teams were like not that interested in signing him. So Chicago gave him a shot and he did well. But in the meantime, Domi goes to Dallas, and like I'm interested to know like what does this do for Domi's fantasy value? Because while he won't get on the top line, clearly, there are other open spots, right? Like you look at today, so Pavelski, Hintz, Robertson, and then Sagan with Delandria and Mason Marchment. And then Dodonov, Ben, and Wyatt Johnston, who's like a high pedigree prospect. But you could see like a Delandria or a Johnston getting bumped, and maybe Domi like gets into a spot that could be kind of interesting. Maybe a second power play. I don't know. It's hard for me. I'm saying all this just to try to make it sound good. At the same time, like I do kind of feel like probably his value goes down, which is kind of weird considering he's going from Chicago where we assumed like everyone would be nothing. But it's hard to imagine him being like a 70-ish point player like he's been so far this season, like just so far down the depth chart. But curious to get your thoughts, Shams.
Oh no, I'm with you, because especially now with Kane gone, like Athanasiou maybe and Tyler Johnson were going to be made. Like, I'm not sure who's even left there that would have been his line mates in that situation. So basically, assuming that they don't pair Ben and Sagan together randomly, Domi's going to be with one of them. And like, while they're not perfect, they're much better than a Athanasiou. And then possibly like they do have like a Marchment on one line, and the name of the rookie that you were talking about, or the young guy,
Wyatt
like,
Johnston.
Wyatt Johnston. Like they still have like some quality there, and then possibly PP2 time. Like I think this is going to be the situation where, like before we were talking about the second that Kane's gone, you basically give up on Domi. Now I think the idea was just to kind of caveat, it's effectively done, but the trade hasn't been done. But either way, I think this might be a situation where you actually hold him, assuming you can fit him in your lineup, to see how it goes, and it might actually be like pretty okay depending on who you're going to have as your options to pick up. Like if you're in a shallow league and you're picking up like decent players anyway, sure, but like if you're in a pretty deep league, it might be a situation like a 14-teamer. You might not find someone better than like a Domi with a Ben that's just laying around waiver wire.
Yeah, I mean, you might be right. Like, Domi might actually just be good. Like, I'd sort of given up on that and figured, like, okay, I liked him because he was playing with Patrick Kane or whatever, but I think he's kind of shown that he's got something. It's not as if Kane was having the most amazing season. If he's going to bump someone, by the way, from the second power play, it's going to be one of, like, Sagan, Dodonov, Marchment, or Wyatt Johnston, which I guess maybe Marchment or Wyatt Johnston could get bumped. We should mention Dodonov, though. He's played now 3 games with Dallas, and he just got his 3rd point. assists today in this game against Chicago. So not too shabby. If anyone was jumping on Dodonov going from Montreal to Dallas, so far so good. I doubt he's going to be point per game moving forward, but a nice little run for him.
Oh yes, a streak to ride, because I'm not sure if he did any more, but if I remember correctly, he's having multiple one-shot games, so it's going to be one of those situations where you're riding that point streak, and if it looks like it's drying up, you're going to get absolutely nothing. And personally, I hate those kind of players, but in your points league or where you're maybe not getting as much value out of shots as I am in my leagues, something to watch going forward.
All right, so we still have a bunch more trades to get to. This might be a long trip. I'm trying to keep it short here, Shams. We had a lot of chit chat at the start that maybe was a big mistake in hindsight, but I don't get to talk to you very often. But okay, let's take a break. Then we'll come back with a bunch more trades that are all very interesting. So we'll be back in just a sec. You're listening to Short Shifts. All right, we are back. It's me, Elon, and Shams breaking down the trades from the last couple of days. The trade deadline is tomorrow, but it seems like most things are done like we discussed. But next up, let's do another defenseman here. We talked about Hronek being traded. How about Shane Gostisbehere going to the Carolina Hurricanes for a pick? And Gostisbehere kind of like Max Domi, actually, who we just talked about. Someone who maybe it seemed at some point his career was kind of over, or if not over, his time of being someone that you care about in fantasy was over. But this has been a pretty solid season for Shane Gostisbehere, especially at the start of the year. Things were really clicking when he was playing with Chychrun, and they were both on that power play. Lately, not as great. Well, he was injured, and he came back 2 points in 4 games since returning from his injury. He was taking some shots. Anyways, it was kind of disappointing to me that because I have Gostisbehere in a couple leagues, and he was not on the top power play in Arizona when he came back from his injury. Valimaki was holding that spot. Brian was kind of explaining to me on the Sunday show that he thinks it's just because Arizona had no reason. They'd rather just see what they have in Valimaki. So whatever. Don't need to read into that anymore. Gostisbehere actually did get a point in each of his last couple games, and he took 5 and 4 shots. So anyways, now he goes to Carolina, and I worry this is kind of like what I was saying about Max Domi. I wonder if just all of a sudden now he's going to fall down the depth chart, because Carolina is not Arizona. I don't know if there are 20 minutes plus a game for Gostisbehere to play, considering this is a team that's got Brent Burns, Brady Shea, Brett Pesce, Jacob Slavin. So you could see Gostisbehere as third pairing. I'm not sure if he's getting a power play spot. So not to be a downer about every single player who's been traded, I'm a little bit worried that this is a downgrade and maybe he loses most of his fantasy relevance at this point.
So I got some good news for you. There was a quote from Brindamore about Shane Gostisbehere, and one of the things he brought up was, we know he's got an offensive flair, so they know that was kind of a part of his game. And same idea with the way I look at Chychrun. Even if he's not getting all the minutes, that 5v5 group is going to be great. And then to add the cherry on top, we should be able to slide him in the power play. So it's probably not going to be the PP1, but the thing that I might be worried about, this might be the situation that Brady Shea might be losing his spot, and then he might be coming in, and then forget who's on, but you could probably make an argument. I know Keller's great, that Carolina PP2 is probably on end when you add everyone up better than Arizona 1. So you might be in a position where you're happily fine.
At the end of the day, it's also the minutes. There's the players you play with on the power play, but it's also just the time to accumulate those power play points. But I guess we'll see. So you're saying there's still reason for hope with Gostisbehere. It's very exciting. All these teams in the East just really loading up. Boston, we just talked about, looking so good. Carolina also, such a scary team already. Now they just added an extra defensive piece. It's almost like Carolina's falling behind. Oh, you only got Gostisbehere. Normally that would be a successful trade deadline. Now it's compare that to the Rangers, who got Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko, and yet still couldn't beat my Ottawa Senators today. So I don't know about that. But anyway, I guess Halak was in net, so I don't know. Not that you guys have discussed on Short Shifts, not that Shesterkin has been that good lately. Anyways, I'm clearly off on a tangent here. Carolina is a good team. They do score goals. So you're right. It might just be that Gostisbehere benefits, like we said with Chychrun, benefits from being on the ice for more goals just because the team is stronger. So we'll have to see what happens there. Let's go to LA, who I guess did Jonathan Quick dirty, according to some people. I'm personally not one of those people. I feel like they gave Jonathan Quick many opportunities to take the net this year, right? They started him as a starter at the start of the year. After they sent Cal Peterson down. They gave Quick lots of opportunities, but he just couldn't do the job. So anyways, not to throw a hit piece here on Jonathan Quick, but just saying I was surprised that people were like, how dare they trade him? It's like LA is looking good, and now they may be looking a little better because they've swapped Quick for Yunus Korpisalo and Gavrikov, so a solid defenseman and a goalie who's been really good this year in Korpisalo. Again, now to pour cold water, I kind of feel like Korpisalo was actually looking really good as a fantasy option over in Columbus because he was doing so much better than Merzlikins. Now he goes to LA where they've already had Phoenix Copley doing pretty well, and like I'm not saying that I think that Copley's better than Korpisalo. It might just be a situation where they just go 50-50 and it'll be a battle, and it's really hard to predict who's going to be the starter. So it makes me wonder now, if you have Copley, do you even hold him? Like LA's playing Montreal today, and Copley got the start. He's stopped 6 of 7 after one period against Montreal. So we'll see how this turns out. By the time you've listened to this, you'll see if Copley flamed out or not. But yeah, it might just be 50-50. And I don't know. I'm kind of losing interest in both of these guys, which is a bummer because I've been really riding Copley. I added him in all of my leagues when he got called up, and I felt like a genius for so long. And now it's like, ugh, now what do I do?
So I've been giving a lot of silver linings, but this is not going to be the time that I do that. I have a feeling that I'm with you on this because I don't think anything has been officially announced, but I think the feeling is I think they play Saturday next, and I think Korpisalo's basically has been said to get that game. So, which
makes sense. You don't trade for him just to leave him on the bench, yeah.
And then in that situation, and you traded Quick away, you're doing a major thing. You're not doing all of this to just have Korpisalo just sit on the bench for 80% of the games. So I'm leaning to your logic until we see something differently or the coach expresses something. We're going to be talking a little bit later about Vegas's line setup, and I think I'm going to look at differently there. But here, until something's said, I am with you, and I think this is going to be a split, maybe at best 60-40 or something, but not great for either.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be tough to hold an LA goal. It'll be kind of like last year when they had Quick and Cal Peterson. They were sort of there was a stretch where Quick was getting a ton of starts, but there was also a stretch where it seemed like 50-50. And so, in a lot of leagues, you don't really want to hold a goalie if he's not getting volume. And also, it's not as if Copley was great because of the volume. It's not like he was putting up sterling numbers. You got a lot of wins at the start. So, yeah, unfortunate, but good for LA. They're going to go for it. And the West is not stacked like the East. As long as they could avoid Colorado, I think there's a chance they could go on a bit of a run. I guess also if they could avoid Edmonton, that might be good. By the way, speaking of Edmonton, I should mention Matthias Ekholm played his first game. I know that on Tuesday, the Short Shifts guys, not including you, Jeremy and Lewis, were talking about what's going to happen on the power play because they traded away Tyson Barrie. They picked up Ekholm. So we've got one game of data so far. And in that game, it looks like they were going 2 defensemen on the top power play for some of it. Bouchard and Nurse played a bit together with Hyman, Draisaitl, and McDavid. Then also Bouchard played by himself for a bit with McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. So it seems like they're still going to now be tinkering with what they're going to do with the power play. I guess one thing we learned is that Matthias Ekholm didn't get a shot on the power play. And I guess Edmonton, they didn't need help on the power play. That's not why they brought in Ekholm. They needed just some defensive help. And Ekholm, hey, but like you said, just being able to play on a team that gets points, Ekholm without the power play still picked up an assist in that win over Toronto. So I could definitely see him maybe getting a bit of an uptick, maybe being a 40 to 45 point guy, even just with 20 plus minutes of even strength time on Edmonton. And even though he's not a power play guy, he still has some offensive abilities. He's usually been around a 30, 40-ish point guy for these past few years. So Ekholm becomes kind of interesting to me in deeper leagues. Of course, the people who were rushing to get Bouchard, thinking that maybe now is his opportunity to basically pick up all those points that Barrie has been getting, probably still something you want to do, but also, well, I don't know. I guess he was on the power play. Actually, it was either 2 defensemen or 1 defenseman. So no, okay, I'll retract what I'm saying. Bouchard definitely you want to go get, right?
Oh yeah, I'm with you. It's just maybe not to the mood eccentric about it, and also keep in mind, I think they may have just been safe and whatnot. We all know if there's a team that exemplifies the blender for their lines, it's Edmonton. So there could be a completely different makeup, and we're only talking about one game. So I wouldn't put too much stock. But the thing is we know he's going to get more power play time definitely than before. So good with him. And then also to add to Ekholm, it was only one game, but I did notice it was nice is that if I remember correctly, he had a decent amount of hits and blocks as well. It was against Toronto, so an offensive team, so they had to play a little bit more defense. But that is something that was going to be nice, is that if he keeps that up, then you have that like stat for, depending on if you're in a baggers league, that plus those, hey, I'm playing with McDavid points, those two together could be a nice, your third or fourth defender that you got off the waiver wire. That's going to be a nice get that you picked up as a streamer, but end up just holding.
Yeah, it's a good point. 2 shots, 3 hits, 2 blocks in his first game. And, he hasn't even built any chemistry yet. So, yeah, Ekholm is good. I mean, the Oilers paid a lot for him, apparently more than Ottawa played for Chychrun. So they're going to give him a lot of ice time. So I think, he's someone I would be interested in adding if you're in a multi-category league for sure. Okay, what should we do next here? I guess since we're at Edmonton, this is like the least fantasy relevant thing in the world, but we should probably mention that Connor McDavid is very good. And he's apparently on the verge of breaking the record on the verge. Like, he has to do it. But, he's, 1 game away from having the most ever multi-goal games in a row. And, all the people ahead of him on the list, it was, 2 guys that I'd never even heard of that played in probably, the 20s or something. McDavid is, making history again. He's been so insane recently. So, anyone who drafted him. Can you imagine if you were galaxy braining this thing going into your fantasy drafts? Last year in a lot of leagues in the Cupful, Austin Matthews had more fantasy points per game than Connor McDavid last year. So I'm sure there are some leagues where people were just taking Matthews first overall because they were going based off of that. And you'd be kicking yourself now because McDavid just hit 50 goals like it's nothing. I always thought of him as a big points guy, not necessarily someone who's going to win the Rocket Richard Trophy, but now he's running away with it.
Oh yeah, I remember there was there's going to be draft talk and you need to be talking about something, but I do with you that with last year, with how Austin Matthews was playing, there was a little bit of talk. Luckily in the couple, I was lucky enough to get the first overall pick and I didn't galaxy braid it. I just went with McDavid, so I'm getting to enjoy this. But if I remember correctly, even without getting another multi-goal game, he's already done something that hasn't been done other than 5 times in the century. We're talking about 100 years. So, he's already done a massive feat. And he has the potential to break the record, but, 5 games of 2 goals, oh yeah, it's just amazing. There was one stat to just kind of tie it up. I don't know now with the Toronto game that happened yesterday, but I saw a stat that McDavid had, was it 21 3-point periods, if I remember correctly? And they combined it with William Nylander that has done that feat 21 times, but it was 3-point games.
Wow.
So just this thing, and everyone loves Nylander. I'm not slighting Nylander. It's just to show how just bonkers McDavid is going off on top of an already great career.
Do you think it was he was watching the World Junior Championships over the holiday and everyone was talking about Bedard and people were saying the next McDavid and he was like, okay, let's cool our jets a little bit. I'm going to show you what the real McDavid can do. Let's not be too excited about this Johnny come lately here. So maybe that's what it was. But okay, so we were talking about the Kings and acquiring Korpisalo. We should probably mention on the Columbus side, if you need volume, Elvis Merzlikins is now the starting goalie on Columbus. They just traded for Hutchinson, which to me is the definition of a goalie that you want to stack up players against when that goalie's playing because he's probably going to let in a lot of goals. I want to say no offense, but obviously I do mean offense, but that's just been my experience with Michael Hutchinson. I still remember that year that Colorado was looking so good and then all their goalies got injured and they were playing Hutchinson in the playoffs. And I was like, well, better luck next year. And they did have better luck in the following year. But anyways, Elvis Merzlikins is the clear starter, just like we thought he would be at the start of the year. I really thought that Elvis was going to be the clear starter and Korpisalo was almost done. And now Korpisalo stole the job. But now, so Elvis, we'll see. And he's had a couple good games in a row recently. So I think if you need a goalie and Merzlikins is out there, definitely someone you should be grabbing before it's too late because there aren't too many starters usually available in free agency. And he's definitely out there in a lot of leagues.
I'm 100% on board with you that Hutchinson is that wording side of just we got a number 1 starter. The one thing, and this is just me just tinfoil hatting the situation, they are tanking right now. So maybe later in the year, if it's getting a little tight, you might be seeing Hutchinson a little bit more than probably the logically would say. But I'm with you that most likely, if you're not going to go down the big brain plan, that you're going to be getting Merzlikins most of the time.
And I mean, I think they could lose games with Merzlikins. I don't think they need to worry too much about going on a huge run with Elvis Merzlikins, who has an 879 save percentage on the year. I think he can be better. He's shown us that he can be better, but but now he is their basically only option, at least until at some point they're going to have Tarasov come in and challenge, but not this year. That's what they brought Hutchinson in for, I guess. Okay, and then I guess to continue with this trade, we have Quick, who went to Columbus and then got flipped to Vegas for basically nothing, but Vegas is obviously taking on that cap hit, and I guess it makes sense because Vegas just can't keep a goalie healthy because Leonard is hurt, of course, Brossois is hurt now, so Thompson is hurt, of course, which means that Quick, at least for the short term, is maybe going to be sharing the net with Adin Hill. I would be shocked if Quick could turn things around. It's goalies, so they're very unpredictable, and who knows? And I've already been seeing people on Twitter salivating over a potential Vegas versus LA playoff series where Jonathan Quick is playing against the Kings, which would be very cool. But I really would just imagine that Jonathan Quick seems like he's done, and I'll be very surprised if he's going to be someone you're going to be interested in grab. Maybe a fun spot start for his first game with Vegas, but not someone that I think is going to get volume or anything like that.
So we're lucky in this situation. We actually have a couple of quotes from the GM. So first step, he did actually drop a nugget saying that he does expect Logan Thompson to return at some point in the regular season. So I don't know if that's going to matter in the fantasy playoffs, but A, that's good news because we didn't really hear much about that. And then B, they're saying basically risking Adin Hill getting injured was not a risk they were willing to take. So the idea is that with Brossois already hurt, they were just being basically how we were talking about Hutchinson. They didn't want to be the ones that actually had to play Hutchinson because they actually want to win games. So their idea was, oh crap, Hutchinson's our second. We have to find someone to be our second. Anybody's better than Hutchinson. Let's bring in Quick. It's basically the vibes I got.
But if they're not wanting Hill to get hurt, that means that Quick might get some games. So this might not be the case where you're thinking wow, now Adin Hill, my initial thought would be Adin Hill is now, ever since Brossois got hurt, I was well, now Hill's going to get all the games. Maybe it is smart for them to be we have to play Quick half the time or close to half the time just to, because, Adin Hill hasn't been the most durable guy himself. So, a lot of these situations, obviously, Brian and I will do a show on Sunday where I'll just talk about all these same topics again, but we'll have a little bit of data at least, and we'll get Brian's takes. But yeah, I'm curious to see how Vegas will run their goals, because it's not like Adin Hill is anything special. He's Adin Hill. Anyway, should we mention, since I'm talking about Vegas, their lines have been somewhat interesting just in that, I should say, Barbashev's been on the top line with Eichel and Marchessault. I think the last time I talked about Vegas, it was Paul Cotter in that spot. So Barbashev did have an assist in the last game, his second game with Vegas against Carolina. So, nothing too special, but it's a good spot to be in. So if you're streaming Vegas, actually, also, if you're listening to this on Friday, Vegas plays Friday, Sunday to end the week, and you probably are full on Saturday. So maybe if you look at your roster and you see you have a guy on Saturday sitting on your bench, if you drop him for Barbashev, you could get 2 games from someone playing with Eichel and Marchessault, so it could be worse.
Oh yeah, as someone that has Barbashev, I picked him up in our shared keeper league to Buffalo. So in that league, it's basically the waiver wires picked dry because everyone's knowing what's going on. So basically, there wasn't many juicy targets, but I did take him because of the 4 games. I got him early in the week. So it is nice to be with Eichel, but something as a word of warning, he's literally getting 0 power play time. Not even power play 2, just 0 power play time. So you are literally just picking him up for the Eichel exposure, which does have its benefits. He's getting more to play on the penalty kill. So just something to keep in mind during your leagues. If you have power play points as a set or whatnot, you're literally getting 0 equity.
Okay, so that's good to know. So yeah, maybe not the most high upside pick. I also didn't mention, by the way, when we were talking about the Oilers, I should have mentioned that they got Nick Bjugstad in a trade from Arizona, who I know you're shrugging and saying who cares? Probably you're right, who cares? Though this is Edmonton. This is the team that puts guys like Fogle and I don't know, McLeod. There's you never know when someone's going to get a shot to play with McDavid or Draisaitl. Yamamoto has been there, and not that any of these people have really been doing anything with it, but Bjugstad has had a decent enough season with Arizona, so definitely not someone that I'm saying rush out and grab. But if you're smart. You're following at Game Day Lines or going to gamedaytweets.com often to see Shams and my retweets of the lines. And like, if you see that Bjugstad is going to be playing on a McDavid or Draisaitl line, like, and you have a spot that day, I'd give him a shot. You never know. So throwing it out there that Bjugstad is going to Edmonton. But I don't even need to ask your comment on that because I could tell from your shrug everything. I guess another one that probably you're just going to shrug. Mikhail Granlund was traded to the Penguins for a pick, and maybe you might be thinking, oh, I wonder if he's going to get a spot on one of the top two lines with Crosby or Malkin. Like, no. So we saw some practice lines. Third line, so not too exciting, and any value he had in Nashville probably goes away because he's also not going to be on the top power play, clearly. So now it's just a depth center, and I can't, like, a lot less interesting to me than like a Max Domi, even like I think Granlund has basically lost all of his fantasy value.
100% on board. Like, you guessed right that I have no interest in Bjugstad. I'd probably take Bjugstad just for the chance of being with McDavid, maybe in a line change versus Granlund.
Okay, and man, I was trying not to do a long shift here, but there's a lot we have scheduled, so I'll just like kind of run through the rest of what we have on this list here. So Evander Kane played his first game for the Rangers today, so I think we owe it to the listeners to at least report on what happened here. Like I've already mentioned a couple times, Ottawa beat the Rangers 5-3. Patrick Kane ended the game with no points, but 4 shots. He got a lot of power play time, not as much as Kreider, but he definitely did get a lot. I guess I could also bring up the Rangers lines here.
Really I have that for you. So the nice thing is that he is with the people you thought. He's with Trocheck and Panarin and even, and then it's the power play. The major one was Cade, Zibanejad, Kreider, and Panarin. So while he had only 4 shots and no points, he is going to be put in a situation to get points. So I'm just going to ride this and like basically, well, as we joked before, is that your trade deadline's already probably passed for fantasy, but either way, I would be perfectly fine with this setup.
Yeah, it seems like it'll be a good spot for him. Interesting, Tarasenko not on the top power play today. He did score a goal, and he had a goal and 2 assists in the previous game versus Philly. So after a cold start with the Rangers, Tarasenko starting to heat up. Really quickly, Kane versus Tarasenko. If you could only have one, who would you take for the rest of the year?
I'll flip a coin. I'll say Tarasenko,
okay.
But yeah.
Okay, I'll vote Kane just to keep things interesting so someone could let us know who won that one. Pierre Engvall got traded from the Leafs to the Islanders, and then he was practicing on the top line. The last time we saw some lines tweeted out, Engvall was playing on a line with Horvat and Anders Lee. So, I mean, they've tried some other players there, and they did nothing, and things switched a lot. So definitely kind of like with the Bjugstad thing, like it's definitely not something that even if he is on a good line, I'm not like rushing because things could change quickly. Also, he is Pierre Engvall, but if you need a streamer, top line players are good. Generally, that's something you want to look for.
You were talking, I believe at one time, I forget if it was in a Discord on the show, of like, hey, Matt Martin might be something. If you're in a league that you were considering picking up Matt Martin because he was here, I would look at it the same way. If give Engvall a shot. Maybe, well, I'm not sure there's going to be many people rushing, so maybe you might even just let the game play and then just see if it's happening. Because, like, Holmstrom was up there, and he literally blew it within the first, 10 minutes and got benched. So maybe just see how a game happens. Maybe pick him up mid-game, and then just, after a little bit look, because I'm not sure there's going to be many people jumping on him like the other trades that we're talking about.
Yeah, I definitely not too excited about Engvall. I don't care what line he's on. How about this JT Miller news? How he was injured, and then they tweeted earlier today, even was it, or yesterday, that he's week to week, and then all of a sudden now JT Miller's playing in this game against the Wild. Maybe he should have stayed out because he currently has no points, no shots, and a single hit, and we're halfway, or no, we're now 2 periods down. So I don't know, hopefully he's okay. I activated him in one of my leagues, had to drop someone, so I would really hope that he's 100%. It was exciting to see him back. We'll see what happens. It was just a weird thing. I mean, he's JT Miller. I know you mentioned that he might be on the trade block. Seems like, I don't know, are Vancouver paying some team to take Miller and that big contract, or is it they're expecting to get picks and a lot of prospects for JT Miller? I wonder what is his value right now, even to other teams with an 8-year, $8 million per year contract sitting on him, and kind of a season where he's been okay in terms of points, but I know he's been getting a lot of crap for some of his other play.
Oh no, I'm with you. That doesn't make sense, but there's a person I trust is Shada Goldman has been hitting a lot of trades lately. And she was the person that's been kind of, not saying it's like gonna happen, but has been saying there's interest. And we know that logic is not always in line with some of these GMs. So someone may have missed out on a Kane or a Tarasenko is like, I need my big gun to win. And maybe that's how it's happening. But it's just something, if there's going to be a trade that happens for Friday, this might be it. I'm saying like a 10% chance. Like, it's not zero, but I'm not saying it's going to happen.
Yeah. Anyways, people listening to this will already know if it happened or not. And yeah, I agree with you. Shams, this has been so fun. We've definitely gone long. I feel like we didn't take too long on each topic, but I guess, yeah, it all adds up. We still had some more things in the list here, but I'll just save it for Brian and I on Sunday. Like Rupe Hintz is on an incredible streak. Dawson Mercer's on an incredible streak. We had some news about Markstrom potentially getting starts. Schmaltz might be injured, something to watch for. But yeah, we'll get to that later. Thanks everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Medium to Long Shifts, as we might have to rename it. I'll just read the credits here super quick as the outro music starts to play. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. You're going to be getting my Matchup Maximizer podcast Sunday morning, where I'll be looking at the schedule for next week. Then a mega show where Brian and I are going to break down all the trades and try to figure out like who's gained and lost the most value for your fantasy leagues. Check out GameDayTweets.com. Shams is doing an amazing job, keeping the content coming. We even added now stats tweets, which we are included in the player news. We're always adding features, but yeah, the player news also, if you didn't catch it, now you could like search for her player. So if you're recording a podcast and you're like, what was Jacob Chychrun traded for again? You can just search for Chychrun in the player news, and then you get all the latest tweets, and everything you see there is going to be like reliable, and you don't have to worry about like who wrote this thing, because it's like you see the actual tweet from the beat writer, and Shams and I only retweet people who we trust, verified beat writers of teams. Yes, that's GameDayTweets.com. Thanks so much to Pat Roach for his awesome theme music that he made so long ago, and it's still a banger. This was the music, Shams, that we used for the almanac when Brian and I did those 2 years of those fantasy quote-unquote almanacs, audio almanacs, I guess we called them. And now we're using that music for short shifts, and I love it. It's playing right now. And then John Reed is our digital media producer. John messaged me just recently saying this is a very long shift. And thanks you, John, for that. It's like, John's like that, when you're a comedian and you're doing your set and then all of a sudden the red light is flashing, like you got to get off the stage. I felt like that was John's message. Anyway, thanks for listening. And until we see you next time, play smart and keep your shifts short.